Well, hello. Welcome to the Securing a Church Ministry Position workshop. The short video is going to give you some insights in how to find, secure, and serve in a church ministry position. My name is Dr. Shane Garrison. I serve as Professor of Educational Ministries here in the Campbellsville University School of Theology. Well, the question always begins, where do I start? And actually, you begin with the search for open church ministry positions, and that search can come from a variety of places. You can certainly go to the largest of all church staff position websites, the LinkedIn and Monster.com for church ministry, and that's called churchstaffing.com. You can see a picture of it here where you can enter the search position you're looking for, the city, state, zip code of where you would like to be. You can also use youth ministry, worship ministry, children's ministry, senior pastor. But church staffing is the largest open source website for church ministry positions. You can also go to Christian college or seminary job boards. They often have those as part of their career services, and you can find ministry positions there. Also, state, denominational, and national organizations have job postings for all sorts of positions: pastor, music, youth, children, other types. And you can also look into ministry networks or ministry associations that might list open positions in their area. For larger churches, you can actually go directly to the church website, and they will usually have a jobs or an employment tab for you to utilize. The search process is rather long, so let's take a look at it. I've included this game board, which feels a little silly to show, but it actually has quite a few steps, and you will want to be aware of those steps. It starts with the position opening. That means there's actually an open position. Someone leaves, someone retires, a new position is created. After the position is opened, usually a search team is formed, particularly for a lead pastor, but it could also be a personnel team or even a staff group or a staff member. They will now get ready to post the job position. So putting it out on those websites, putting it out on their own church website or in those associations and networks. They will then begin receiving resumes. This is where you would actually submit your resume, and we'll talk about resumes in just a moment. After they receive a batch of resumes, they will do some social media checks. They will look at photos and social media platforms to see what you've posted and what you've included. This is a time to be very cautious, utilizing wisdom and just practical, logical sense when you think about what you're posting online, because the churches will certainly be looking. After they've done a little bit of background search on you without you knowing, they might allow for that first vetting. This could be reaching out to you, asking a few questions, asking maybe even for a phone call. They will often ask you to submit a questionnaire or some answers to some questions, maybe videos, particularly of sermons that you've preached, could be other materials that you've prepared beyond the resume, beyond the questionnaire. And eventually you'll make it to the first round of interviews. This is usually with the individual or the small group that is conducting the search. You could be invited in a second interview to actually meet with leadership, team leadership, even senior ministry leadership, all depending on the church denomination and the size of the church. After you meet with the leadership team, the particularly senior leadership team, they will likely do a background check. Background checks would be criminal, federal, and state, but it could also be financial. It could also be educational, ensuring that you actually have the degrees that your resume has indicated. They will also check your recommendations and your references and your referrals. So they're going to call some people on you, checking in with what you have listed as your references and maybe even additional references beyond those that you've provided. Finally, you're going to have some sort of a trial Sunday or a trial weekend. That's particularly in the smaller church setting where you might have to preach a sermon or teach a lesson or speak in front of a group. You might have to share your testimony. You might have to meet different groups and ministry teams. But there's some way to do a more widely available interview to a wider church. Now, if you're in a larger church, that may not be necessary. They may just make the hiring after the background check and the recommendations. Finally, an offer is made, a vote possibly is taken, a decision is given, and then you too get to decide whether to accept the offer or at any point along the way to reject the offer. So it's a long process. Don't get impatient. It does take a while to come together. So let's talk about the ministry resume for a minute. This is your personal hello and your introduction to the church that's searching. The ministry resume really is part two of two pieces that you're going to send to a church. You're going to send a cover letter, an interest letter, an introduction letter, and then the ministry resume will follow. In the cover letter, I would include something like this. You want to say, hello, search team members, the individual that you're working with, maybe the lead pastor, whomever's conducting the search. My name is, I've learned of your position, where you saw it, where you found out about it, and submit my resume. Your resume should then include several miniature paragraphs, a couple sentences about what you've learned about the church and its mission, its values, its directions. What you've learned, you've done your research, you've done your background checks, you've looked at the website, you've looked at the Facebook Live, the social media channels, you've learned about its reputation in the community. Then you want to write about yourself, just in a couple sentences, 2 or 3 sentences about your experience and your background. Finally, you want to write 2 or 3 sentences, this is kind of paragraph 4, about how your experience and the church's mission align. I would then go on to say, you need to give them how to contact you the easiest. For CU, Campbellsville University students, do not use your CU email account. One day that may not be active if you're not a student any longer. And also, I would say, give a working mobile number that has a voicemail set up. Too many of you have cell phones that do not have a greeting or any kind of voicemail system set up, or it's so full of voicemails that it's not taking any new voicemails. So make sure you create a greeting on your phone and allow for the voicemail to be received. Then you would give some closing salutations. That's the cover letter or the interest letter. Then you're also going to include the ministry resume. And a ministry resume is different than a secular job resume. It should include these things. These are kind of the must-haves. Your name, your current position, your current contact information, but also a ministry vision and a ministry objective. What do you really believe God has called you to do, and how do you believe God has prepared and equipped you to fulfill that vision? You want to include any education at the undergraduate, at the graduate or postgraduate level. That can also include education that may have included training through ministry training organizations or networks. And then list your ministry experience. Begin with paid ministry experience, but you can include volunteer, part-time, internship, summer ministry. It's okay to have everything that has been involved. If you've served as a volunteer for a while, if you've served as a summer intern for a while, if you served with a camp or an organization or a mission group, include it. You might want to include your basic theological statements and any key doctrinal positions, particularly if they coincide with the church that you are applying to. Then you might want to include hobbies or areas of interest, life and family information. You can include certainly any licensing, ordination, or any sponsorship or mentorship from a denomination or a church. And then include all your social media links. These need to be active, easy to access, easy to find, along with full references. Do not do the references upon request or references available upon request. No, provide them. I include 4 to 6 references from different places, different backgrounds, different types of people. Please know this, your church ministry resume can be longer than 2 pages. The old adage that front and back is all you need in a resume for a job in business or in management, that doesn't apply to church. It can be longer than 2 or more pages. And include photos. Don't go over the top, but it certainly can include photos of you, your family, maybe the ministry that you're involved in. That's not out of line. So that's about the church interest or introduction letter, the cover letter, and the church ministry resume. Well, let's talk a moment about if you make it to an interview, what that interview might include. A church ministry position will include at least 1 interview, sometimes over in person, sometimes via Zoom or online. Most often it includes 2 interviews. I've seen as many as 3 or 4. So here are some questions you're going to get asked, and then some questions you should ask them. You are going to be asked to share your testimony to faith in Christ. It's pretty basic, pretty understandable. You're going to be asked about your sense of ministry calling, your sense of vocational calling, whether that's calling specifically in a particular kind of ministry or more generically just to serve and to serve in God's kingdom. You're going to be asked about why you believe God is leading you to that particular ministry role and that particular church. You're going to be asked about your leadership style, your ministry focus, even your spiritual gifts. These are very common questions that you will be asked. And then you're going to be asked about your future plans, where you see God's leadership in your life and in your family. It's kind of the where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years question. But that's a pretty important for a church that's considering not just a 1 year or 2 year, they're thinking longer than that. But you also get the ability to ask them some questions. So when you get that opportunity, you can be sensitive to the moment and sensitive to the dynamic of what's happening in the group or the individual interview, but ask them, why did the last person leave? Why is there a vacancy? What prompted that person to make a change, or was it retirement, or was it brand new, or what led to needing the position filled? I always ask this question, particularly to a group. What does ministry success look like to you? What does it look like for this position, for this role? What does success look like to you? Because you're actually learning what they value most, and you're learning what expectations are going to be placed upon you. I would also ask in that same vein, how is success measured by senior leadership? If you are applying for the senior leadership job, how is success measured by the elders and deacon or the board? How is success measured? Is it numeric? Is it spiritual? Is it financial? Is it staff and personnel management? How is success measured? I would also ask, what are the presenting obstacles? Or what are the presenting challenges? What are current roadblocks in the way of success? And identify a few of those. Those are really, really key to know. And then finally, if this is not a senior leadership position, I would ask, is senior leadership supportive of this role, and how? Not just they said yes and agreed to allow it to be hired out, but why does senior leadership support this role, and how are they supporting this role? Those are some questions you will be asked, and some questions that you need to ask in your interview. Well, let's conclude on some terms that you might hear in church ministry interviews or church ministry HR, human relations situations. You will hear the term in many churches, the search committee. That is a group of volunteers that have been brought together to conduct the interviews, the vetting, the background checks, and arrange for all the steps in a consideration of a candidate. The search committee will usually have a chairperson, chairman, chairwoman, leader who will oversee the search committee, and they will be the one primarily dealing with the individual candidates. You could also have a personnel team or a staff representative group that's over personnel. So it could be a team, it could be a committee, it could be a group of volunteers, could be part of the current church staff. A staff-led decision simply means this: the church is not going to have to vote. There's not going to be a ballot. There's not going to be a trial Sunday. There's just going to be a decision by the staff, by the managing leader, by the senior pastor on that staff position. A trial Sunday is a church decision, a congregational decision, where there will be something like a formal interview, a preached sermon, a taught lesson, a testimony, a way to meet and greet, and then the church will come together to decide in a voting process. Coming in view of a call, that's the invitation to the candidate to do that trial Sunday. You've been invited to come in view of a potential call. A lot of conservative, particularly rural churches, use that terminology of coming in view of a call. Now, you also have the offer or the package. This includes compensation, salary, but also benefits, and even additional things that might be made available to the candidate, like a car or like cell phone allowance or like expenses for conferences and education. It could also include a housing option, particularly if there is a parsonage that's an attachment to the church. You're going to get an offer or a package. Now, that's always negotiable. It's always up for discussion and up for consideration. Just because they offer it to you doesn't mean it has to stay there at that final plan. You can always counter, you can always negotiate, you can always make suggestions and considerations, because it's an offer, but you have to agree in order for it to become a contract or a hiring experience. So that's a little bit about those terms that pop up in church ministry HR that we don't always see in other HR places. I hope these series of videos have been helpful to you on securing a church ministry position. And for each and every one of you, we are praying God's direction as you search to be a servant for the church and world. God bless.